Chapter 82. During the newcomer trial, he had swept away the other geniuses and won the title of newcomer king. At that time, he felt that the other geniuses were only SOSL. Now that he thought about it, he was wrong. The other geniuses among the newcomers were not too weak, but too immature. They had not grown up yet. Perhaps in a few years, some of them would grow very strong. Take him down. Tai waved his hand and said. Lu Ming was already seriously injured, so there was no need for him to take action. Let's see how you resist now. The remaining dozen or so disciples of the Law Enforcement Hall walked towards Lu Ming with a ferocious expression. Lu Ming had actually injured more than 20 of them. They were both afraid and hateful of Lu Ming. Haha. Lu Ming supported himself with his long sword. He glanced around and sneered again and again. Damn it, what are you laughing at? You'll see when you get to the Law Enforcement Hall. A skinny young man smiled sinisterly and clawed at Lu Ming's head. He wanted to press Lu Ming's head to the ground and humiliate him. But whoosh! A sword light flashed and a few streams of blood spurted out. There were 5 fingers in the blood. The skinny young man looked at his bare palm in a daze and then let out a heart-wrenching scream. Ah, my fingers, Lu Ming. I want you dead. That sword attack just now was of course from Lu Ming. Go, let's attack together. The others roared. There were a total of 10 people, including a 9th-level martial master expert. One attack after another was directed at Lu Ming. Lu Ming barely raised his true chi and waved his sword to block. Clang, clang. After a few consecutive moves, Lu Ming's body kept retreating. His body was hit by a sword and blood immediately flowed out. Lu Ming, get down and surrender. A young man from the Law Enforcement Hall shouted. In your dreams. There were only 2 simple words in response. Then I'll beat you until you're down. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. One attack after another was directed at Lu Ming. These disciples of the Law Enforcement Hall were all experts. Lu Ming, on the other hand, was severely injured. It was difficult for him to resist. After a few moves, more wounds appeared on his body, and blood flowed freely. Lu Ming's entire body was dyed red with blood. His footsteps were unsteady, as if he could collapse at any moment. However, he still stood tall and straight, and his gaze was still firm and persistent. At this moment, the scene was silent. The air seemed to have frozen at this moment. No one spoke. They all stared blankly at that figure. Senior brother Lu Ming. The new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard all clenched their fists, their eyes red. Their eyes were filled with guilt. They felt guilty for not speaking up earlier. They all knew that the reason Lu Ming had come here and demolished the Star Moon Pavilion was to avenge Pang Shi. For a friend, for a brother, to be able to do this was a true man, a true man. Compared to Lu Ming, they felt that they were too weak. Stop it! Stop it! The skinny young man roared and suddenly rushed forward. Slap! The red-robed young man suddenly rushed forward and sent the skinny young man flying with a slap. He said arrogantly, Get lost. You'll see what happens later. Then, he looked at Lu Ming and laughed loudly. Lu Ming, weren't you very arrogant earlier? What's wrong? You can't do it anymore. Come and hit me, huh? Bang! As soon as the red-robed young man finished speaking, he received a heavy slap to the face. The slap was extremely loud and ruthless. The red-robed young man's body spun a few times before he stopped. One side of his face was almost smashed, and blood was spurting out of his teeth. He was beaten senseless, and for a moment, he even forgot to scream. He stared blankly at the person who hit him. It was a woman, an extremely seductive and sexy woman with an explosive figure. However, at this moment, her expression was incomparably cold. Mullins! Mullins! A name flashed through the red-robed young man's mind. Mullins had finally arrived. No one could see how she arrived. Since you asked for a slap, I'll fulfill your wish, Mullins said coldly. Then, she waved her hand again. Slap. Another slap. This time, it landed directly on the other side of the red-robed young man's face. Blood was still spurting out of his mouth because he had lost all his teeth. The red-robed young man did not fly out. He was pulled by a force and spun a dozen times on the spot before he came to a stop. It was obvious how heavy the slap was. As soon as he stopped, he saw Mulins's cold face again. His heart skipped a beat, and he almost wet himself. He shouted, "Don't laugh, want?" His mouth was leaking air, and he could not even speak clearly. "Get lost." Bang! Mulins kicked the red-robed young man more than 10 meters away. He screamed and fainted. Not far away, Yao Tianyu, who had been very calm, could no longer stay calm. He looked at Mulins with a grave expression. The people from the tribunal council did not dare to make a move. They looked at Mulins solemnly. Mulins did not look at the others. She walked to Lu Ming's side and asked with a concerned expression, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I won't die. I owe you another favor this time." Lu Ming smiled. "You can still laugh? Hurry up and take this pill." Mulins took out a pill and handed it to Lu Ming. Lu Ming did not stand on ceremony and swallowed it. The pill melted as soon as it entered his mouth. Then, it turned into a wave of energy that permeated Lu Ming's body. His wound quickly stopped bleeding, and he was no longer bleeding. What a strong medicinal effect. This healing pill must be of a high grade. Mulins looked at Yao Tianyu and said coldly, "How dare you attack a disciple of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard?" "Elder Mulins." Yao Tianyu's expression was ugly. He cupped his fists and said, "Elder Mulins, we are enforcing the law impartially." Lu Ming relied on his high cultivation to injure dozens of people from the Star Moon Pavilion for no reason. He even destroyed the Star Moon Pavilion by force. Such an unruly and reckless person must be punished severely by the Tribunal Council. But Lu Ming is crazy. Not only did he resist arrest, but he also injured so many people from the Tribunal Council. Such a person, no matter what, he must be severely punished. Elder Mulins, as the head elder of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard, I hope you won't cover for him. Nonsense. The skinny young man's face was swollen after being slapped by the red-robed young man. He walked out and said, "It was clearly the Star Moon Pavilion who forcefully bought the materials of our Vermilion Bird Courtyard's new disciples. They even wantonly attacked people. Senior brother Lu Ming is fighting for justice for us. How is this against the rules?" "That's right. Senior brother Lu Ming is fighting for justice for us." Several new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard walked out. With Mulan's arrival, their courage was boosted. They could no longer hold it in and told the truth. "Nonsense," Yao Tianyu said in a low voice. "How could the Star Moon Pavilion do such a thing? If they did, the Tribunal Council would have punished them long ago. Moreover, you said that they forcefully bought a courtyard from the Vermilion Bird Courtyard. Does the Star Moon Pavilion have a grudge with the Vermilion Bird Courtyard?" Chapter 83. No, that's not it. We're speaking the truth. A few disciples from the Vermilion Bird Courtyard hurriedly explained. "Enough." Mulins waved her hand and looked at Yao Tianyu. "Now, let me tell you clearly. I don't care who Lu Ming beat up or whose house he destroyed. I don't care. If I say that Lu Ming is innocent, he is innocent. If I say that he is innocent, he is innocent." How domineering. This is Mulins. When she's domineering, she doesn't talk reason at all. Yao Tianyu's face instantly turned red. He almost suffered internal injuries. Mulins didn't play by the rules. However, he couldn't do anything to Mulins. "Elder Mulins, although you're an elder of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard and the granddaughter of Principal Yin, you can't bully others just because you're powerful. There are so many disciples here watching." Yao Tianyu finally said this after a long time. "Yes, I'm bullying others. What's wrong with that?" Mulins replied calmly. Yao Tianyu was so angry that his body trembled. All right. If that's the case, I'll report this to the elders of the disciplinary hall. Let's go." Mulins arrived in a domineering manner. Yao Tianyu knew that it was impossible to take down Lu Ming today. After saying this, he turned to leave. "Who said that you can leave?" Mulins's cold voice sounded. Yao Tianyu paused and looked at Mulins. He gritted his teeth and said, "Elder Mulins, do you have any other instructions? You injured him and want to leave just like that? Aren't you being too lenient? Why don't you leave the medical fees behind? I think you'll need at least 1 or 2 million taels of silver to recover from such injuries." Mulins's gaze lingered on Lu Ming as she spoke slowly. "Medical fees? 1 or 2 million taels of silver. All around, the onlookers were stunned. Some of them dug their ears hard, thinking that they had misheard. Even Lu Ming was in a daze. Mulin's was asking for an exorbitant price. Sure enough, Yao Tianyu couldn't hold it in anymore and roared. Medical fees? Mulin's, don't go overboard. Lu Ming injured so many of us? I didn't even ask him for medical expenses, and you actually asked me for medical expenses? Impossible. Let me tell you, impossible. The people who injured you? They deserve it. Let me tell you, if you don't pay the medical fees today, I don't mind breaking your bones one by one. Mullins said coldly. He was too domineering and overbearing. He didn't give Yao Tianyu any face at all. No, it wasn't that he didn't give Yao Tianyu any face, but that he didn't put him in his eyes at all. Yao Tianyu's expression was extremely ugly. Although he was a genius on the bronze list, he was still just a bronze disciple. If he were to fight with Mullins, he would definitely be slapped to death. His face alternated between green and white. If he were to give in today and pay the medical fees, he would lose all his face. Haha, niece Mullins, in my opinion, let's just let this matter rest. At this moment, a generous voice was heard. In the sky, a figure descended from the sky. It was an old man in his 60s. He wore a silver robe and had a kind smile on his face. It was a silver-robed elder. Seeing this old man, Yao Tianyu was overjoyed and shouted, "Elder Ming, you must seek justice for this disciple. Elder Mullins is too much." This silver-robed elder belonged to the Azure Dragon courtyard. Mullins's expression also darkened. She said, "Old Ming, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business." The surrounding people were dumbfounded. Mullins was too awesome. She called a silver-robed elder an old man? However, Elder Ming did not show any signs of anger. He was still smiling as he said, "I have already heard about the cause and effect of this matter. I think there is a big misunderstanding in this matter. In my opinion, the fault lies with the Star Moon Pavilion." The Star Moon Pavilion forcefully bought the disciples' materials. Lu Ming fought for justice and injured the disciple of the Star Moon Pavilion. As members of the disciplinary hall, Yao Tianyu and the rest naturally had to intervene when they saw Lu Ming injuring someone. That was why a fight broke out. This is a complete misunderstanding. Since both sides have people injured, I think we should just let this matter rest. Lu Ming's heart trembled. This was abandoning the rook to save the king. This Elder Ming looked amiable, but he was actually a cunning old fox. In one sentence, he pushed all the blame to the Star Moon Pavilion. In this way, Yao Tianyu naturally did not need to pay the medical fees. Yao Tianyu and the rest would also have nothing to say to the disciplinary hall elder. Yao Tianyu's face darkened, and he did not say anything. If this matter was really investigated, the fact that the Star Moon Pavilion forcefully bought the materials of the new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard would definitely not be concealed. Hence, it was good to push the blame to the Star Moon Pavilion. Mullins's eyes flashed slightly. This Elder Ming was a silver-robed elder. If he was bent on protecting Yao Tianyu, there was nothing she could do. Oh, since it is the Star Moon Pavilion's fault, they must be severely punished. Otherwise, the disciples of the 4 courtyards will not be convinced. Mullins's eyes flashed and she smiled. Of course, the Star Moon Pavilion will definitely be severely punished. Moreover, all the materials will be returned. Elder Ming smiled and said to Yao Tianyu, "Tianyu, why aren't you bringing the disciples of the disciplinary hall back to treat their injuries?" "Yes." Yao Tianyu cupped his fists and instructed the disciples who were not injured to help the injured disciples back to treat their injuries. Lu Ming. Afterward, Yao Tianyu glanced at Lu Ming. His gaze was extremely cold. He then turned and left. "Yao Tianyu!" Lu Ming suddenly shouted. Yao Tianyu paused and turned around to look at Lu Ming coldly. Lu Ming stared at Yao Tianyu with bright eyes and said, "Yao Tianyu, you asked some underlings to besiege me. What kind of ability is that? If you have the ability, fight with me. I am challenging you now. Do you dare to accept the challenge?" As soon as he said that, the crowd suddenly fell into silence. Lu Ming actually dared to challenge Yao Tianyu? How could that be? How could he be Yao Tianyu's opponent? "You want to challenge me?" Yao Tianyu asked in return. "That's right," Lu Ming replied firmly. Yao Tianyu revealed a mocking smile and said disdainfully, Lu Ming, I am a disciple on the bronze roll. What right do you have to challenge me? Wait until you become a disciple on the bronze roll before you challenge me. Now, you are not qualified. Yao Tianyu's eyes were full of arrogance and disdain. After saying that, he turned and left. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. Disdain to accept my challenge? Lu Ming couldn't help but clench his fists. Lu Ming, don't think too much. This is the rule of the Mystic Essence Sword Sect. If you want to challenge a disciple on the bronze roll, you must also be on the bronze roll. Otherwise, you don't have the right to challenge. Mulins explained to Lu Ming. I see, Lu Ming muttered. However, Yao Tianyu's arrogant and disdainful eyes just now lingered in Lu Ming's mind. Bronze roll? I will reach it soon. Yao Tianyu, just you wait. Lu Ming clenched his fists and his eyes were firm. Lu Ming, are you okay? Lu Ming, are you okay? Chapter 84. I'm fine. Lu Ming smiled, but the two of them still looked at Lu Ming in shock. This was because Lu Ming's body was completely drenched in blood. He looked like a bloody man. Especially Hua Qi. In addition to shock, there was also a complicated look in his eyes. Deep in his eyes, there was even gratitude and admiration. By the way, how is Peng Shi? Lu Ming asked worriedly. He's fine. The alchemist has already set his bones and fed him a healing pill. He should be fine. Hua Qi said. That's good. Lu Ming smiled. Suddenly, his body swayed and his face turned pale. Lu Ming, what's wrong? Mulins, Feng Wu, and Hua Qi were shocked. Lu Ming smiled bitterly and said, It seems that I have to treat my injuries on the spot. Immediately, Lu Ming sat down cross-legged and began to heal his injuries with the true dragon battle art. Damn it! Hua Qi growled. Lu Ming couldn't even go back to heal his injuries. It was obvious how serious his injuries were. Then, Hua Qi, Feng Wu, and Mulins all stood near Lu Ming to protect him. The surrounding onlookers watched for a while and left one after another. The news of this battle spread throughout the entire Mystic Essence Sword Sect at the speed of a whirlwind. After hearing this news, everyone had different reactions. Some scoffed, thinking that Lu Ming was a reckless man who did things impulsively and disregarded the consequences. It was unwise to fight even though he knew that he was no match for Lu Ming. But some praised Lu Ming, thinking that Lu Ming was loyal and firm on the path of martial arts. He had an indomitable will and the will to advance bravely. On the path of martial arts, one should be fearless and attack when necessary. If one had to be fearful of everything and even swallow their anger, then what was the point of practicing martial arts? Anyway, there were all kinds of opinions. Of course, Lu Ming didn't know all of this. He was focused on healing his injuries. 6 hours passed in the blink of an eye. When Lu Ming opened his eyes, it was already evening. Lu Ming, are you feeling better? Mulins was the first to notice that Lu Ming had woken up. She hastily asked, Much better. Lu Ming smiled faintly. After 12 hours of recuperation, his injuries had basically stabilized. As long as he persevered for a period of time, he would be completely healed. Feng Wu and Hua Qi also hurried to Lu Ming's side. Lu Ming felt warmth in his heart. He knew that when he was recuperating, these people had been guarding him. However, there was a skinny young man who had not left and was watching from a distance. Let's go back, Lu Ming said. Then, he walked up to the skinny youth and asked, What's your name? Lu. Senior brother Lu. My name is Li Yi. The skinny youth said excitedly. Li Yi, thank you for this. Lu Ming smiled. No. Senior brother Lu Ming, I should be the one thanking you. Li Yi said hastily. Let's go back to the Vermilion Bird Courtyard together. Lu Ming smiled. The few of them went back to the Vermilion Bird Courtyard together. Before long, Lu Ming and the others had returned to the dormitory. After Lu Ming came back, he did not go back to his room. Instead, he went to Peng Shi's room. Peng Shi was lying on the bed with bandages all over his body. His legs and arms were also in plaster. At this moment, Peng Shi had already woken up. Seeing Lu Ming come in, he struggled to get up and shouted, Senior brother Lu Ming, are you all right? Don't move. Lie down and rest. Lu Ming quickly stopped Peng Shi from moving and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I'm fine. Senior brother Lu Ming, I'm sorry. It's all my fault that you're so badly injured," Peng Shi said with tears in his eyes. Obviously, he had heard about Lu Ming's battle. After all, more than 6 hours had passed. "I should be the one apologizing. Yao Tianyu's target was me, but you were implicated," Lu Ming said. No, it's not senior brother Lu Ming's fault. It's all my fault for being too weak. Otherwise, I wouldn't have implicated you," Peng Shi said. Peng Shi said. His eyes were filled with self-blame and determination. "All right, Big Shi, don't think too much. Have a good rest." Lu Ming smiled and patted Peng Shi's shoulder. Then, he walked out of Peng Shi's room. After returning to his room, Lu Ming entered the Temple of Paragon. The crimson scale snake armor is so damaged. After taking off all his clothes, Lu Ming looked at the tattered crimson scale snake armor in his hands and smiled bitterly. This time, if he did not have the crimson scale snake armor as a layer of protection, his injuries would have been worse. After changing his clothes, Lu Ming went out to fetch water to wash his body. Then, he returned to the Temple of Paragon and continued to heal his injuries. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. 7 days later, Lu Ming practiced a set of fist techniques in the courtyard to exercise his muscles and bones. "After 7 days, my injuries have healed." Lu Ming felt it and thought to himself. His eyes flashed with joy. He realized that the true chi cultivated by the true dragon battle art was not only strong and condensed, but also very effective in healing injuries. If it was an ordinary person, it would take at least a month to recover from such injuries. However, he only used 7 days. A divine-level cultivation art was indeed very useful. Creak. At this moment, the door of the courtyard was pushed open and Feng Wu walked in. "Lu Ming, how are your injuries? I brought some medicinal wine for you. Do you want to try it?" Feng Wu smiled brightly. "I've already recovered." Lu Ming smiled. "Ah." The smile on Feng Wu's face froze. She looked at Lu Ming as if he was a monster and said, "It's only been 7 days and you've already recovered?" "Yes, what's so strange about it? Don't you know that I'm a genius?" Lu Ming waved his hand and his palm cut through the air, making a violent whistling sound. Then, he looked at Feng Wu with a smug face. "Genius? Can a genius be beaten up like this?" Feng Wu curled her lips in disdain. However, there was still shock in the depths of her eyes. He had recovered in 7 days. What a monster. "Oh right, Feng Wu, can you tell me about the bronze list? How strong are the geniuses on the bronze list?" Lu Ming asked. "Bronze list? Very strong." Speaking of the bronze list, Feng Wu's face became serious and said, "You also know that the bronze list requires you to win 10 matches in a row on the bronze platform. It's not easy to win 10 matches in a row. The further you go, the more difficult it is. For example, after you win 8 matches in a row, you will have to face an opponent who also won 8 matches in a row in the 9th match. After you win 9 matches in a row, you will have to face an opponent who also won 9 matches in a row. Therefore, it's really difficult to win 10 matches in a row. Therefore, the geniuses on the bronze list are extremely powerful. Defeating a martial artist of the same level with one move is as easy as eating and drinking. I heard that most of the geniuses on the bronze list have successfully cultivated at least one profound level low-grade martial technique. Even if they didn't succeed in cultivating a profound level martial technique, they would have mastered some kind of secret technique. Some even cultivated the way of body refining. Chapter 85. Then how many people are on the bronze list? Lu Ming asked. 56 people. Other than the Qilin courtyard, there are a total of 56 geniuses on the bronze list. Feng Wu said. Only 56? Lu Ming whispered. Every year, the Xinyuan sword sect would recruit a group of disciples. As long as they were not over 30 years old, they would be considered disciples. After so many years, the number of bronze disciples in the Xinyuan sword sect had already exceeded 50,000. There were only 56 geniuses on the bronze list who exceeded 50,000, 1 in 100. One had to know that those who were able to join the Xinyuan sword sect had to go through many examinations. It already represented talent, and they had to go through 1 in 100. From this, it could be seen how talented the geniuses on the bronze list were. Yao Tianyu, what rank is he? Lu Ming asked again. 51. Feng Wu's eyes flashed. He looked at Lu Ming carefully and said, "You can't really be thinking of challenging Yao Tianyu, right? Let me tell you, Yao Tianyu's talent is terrifying. He joined the Mystic Essence Sword sect 2 years ago. I heard that during the newcomer trial, he was a strong contender for newcomer king. Although he failed, his talent is not to be underestimated. Although he is ranked 51st, his ability has improved very quickly. I believe that he will continue to rise. Lu Ming, in another year's time, it will not be a problem for you to defeat him. However, it is still too early this year." "Feng Wu, you don't believe me? How about we make a bet? Let's bet on whether I can defeat Yao Tianyu within 4 months. Lu Ming smiled slightly. "Oh, what are you betting on?" Feng Wu said. "What are you betting on? Let me think about it." Lu Ming rubbed his chin, and then his eyes started to wander around Feng Wu's body, from upstream to downstream, and then from downstream to upstream. From time to time, he would even sigh. Feng Wu's beautiful face immediately turned red. She glared at Lu Ming and shouted, "Lu Ming, you're shameless. Don't even think about it." "Feng Wu, why are you scolding me? Are you thinking the wrong way? I just want to bet on a big meal to see if you have that much money. You see, aren't your thoughts impure?" Lu Ming asked in surprise. "You?" Feng Wu's face turned even redder, all the way to his ears. He glared fiercely at Lu Ming and said fiercely, "All right, I'll bet. At that time, if I don't ruthlessly slaughter you, I won't be called Feng Wu." Then, he threw a jar of medicinal wine at Lu Ming and walked away angrily. "Ha ha ha." Lu Ming laughed out loud. It was quite interesting to occasionally tease the great beauty Feng Wu. Opening the wine jug, Lu Ming gulped down a few mouthfuls. Then, he began to consider his future path of cultivation. Cultivating the foundation spear technique like this is too slow. If it continues like this, I don't know when I will be able to cultivate the flaming astral spear technique. I must use external forces to speed up the cultivation of the foundation spear technique. If one wanted to enter the bronze list, they had to master a profound level martial skill. Got it. As Lu Ming was thinking, his eyes suddenly lit up, following which, he gulped down the entire jar of medicinal wine. It was a good wine, but unfortunately, it had a medicinal taste and lacked a lot of flavor. Lu Ming clicked his tongue and walked out. The first place he went was the contribution hall. Exchanging 2 million silver taels for contribution points, he had a total of 20,000 contribution points. He only had a few 100,000 silver taels left. Adding the contribution points from before, he had a total of 25,500 contribution points. Then, he began to exchange for demon beast blood essence. What he wanted to exchange now was the blood essence of a second-class 8th-level demon beast. The blood essence of a second-class 8th-level demon beast was worth 800 contribution points. Lu Ming exchanged 20 sets, which cost him 16,000 contribution points. It was too expensive, causing Lu Ming's heart to twitch a few times. He wanted to exchange for some Class 9 LV2 demonic beast blood essence, but it cost 1,600 contribution points per set. Lu Ming smiled bitterly and could only give up for the time being. After exchanging for demon beast blood essence, Lu Ming left the Mystic Essence Sword sect and headed east. The layout of the Mystic Essence Sword sect was rather peculiar. The 4 courtyards occupied the 4 most majestic mountains in the 4 directions. As for the central region, it was an even wider region. This area not only had the Qilin courtyard, but also the mission hall, the contribution hall, the bronze platform, and other important places of the Mystic Essence Sword sect. Further north of the Black Tortoise courtyard was the core area of the Mystic Essence Sword sect. This was because the sect master, gold-robed elders, gold-level disciples, and some silver-robed elders of the Mystic Essence Sword sect were cultivating in this area. It was the core area of the Mystic Essence Sword sect's power. The east of the Azure Dragon courtyard was connected to a vast mountain range. This mountain range was called the Coastal Mountain Range. It was vast and boundless, and countless demon beasts lived in it. It was said that beyond the coastal mountain range was the endless sea. It could be said that the Burning Sun Empire was at the easternmost part of the divine wilderness continent. Lu Ming wanted to go to the coastal mountain range to find a good place to practice his spear technique. It was impossible for Lu Ming to go deep into the coastal mountain range. He was only at the periphery. 2 days later, Lu Ming went about 200 miles deep. Rumble. A waterfall rumbled. The water fell from a height of over 1,000 meters, forming a huge impact that shook the surrounding few hundred meters. This is it. I'll use this waterfall to cultivate. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. Then, Lu Ming took out the flame-patterned spear and slowly walked towards the waterfall from the side. The silver water column fell from a height of over 1,000 meters, and its momentum was extremely terrifying. The closer he got, the more he could feel the majestic power. To practice the spear, the first thing is to practice the spear. Only when the spear is stable can the other basic spear techniques be easily grasped. Then, Lu Ming grabbed the end of the spear with one hand, straightened his hand, and extended the spear into the waterfall. The moment the spear was washed by the waterfall, Lu Ming felt an extremely strong pressure on the spear. He bent his wrist and threw the spear downwards. True Qi erupted as he pulled back the spear with a fierce force. What a strong force! It's not stable at all. However, this is also a good place to cultivate. Continue. Lu Ming's eyes were bright and unwavering. He continued to extend the spear and infused his true qi into the spear. This time, he held on for 2 more breaths before the spear was thrown downwards by the waterfall. Continue. Continue. Lu Ming was not discouraged and continued to cultivate over and over again. Lu Ming realized that cultivating the spear like this consumed a terrifying amount of true qi. Every time he cultivated for a period of time, Lu Ming would have to go to the side and circulate the true dragon art to recover his true qi. Of course, this also had its benefits. Every time he drained his true qi, he would cultivate and replenish it. This would make his true qi more condensed and his foundation more stable. During this period, Lu Ming would occasionally devour and refine a portion of demonic beast's blood essence. His cultivation base was rapidly increasing. 7 days later, Lu Ming could already hold the spear in the waterfall for more than 10 minutes. However, it was very unstable. The spear swayed back and forth in the waterfall. However, this was already a great improvement. Chapter 86. At this point, Lu Ming's progress in the foundation spear technique was lightning fast. His spear thrust was as steady as a mountain, and he could even stab a fly flying in the air. On the third 7 days, Lu Ming even tied a 100-gene stone under the tip of the spear. Holding the 100-gene stone, Lu Ming practiced his spear in the waterfall. Just like that, a month passed. After a month of hard work, Lu Ming finally cultivated the foundation spear technique to an extremely profound level. Holding the spear in his hand, he was as steady as a mountain. And after a month of hard work, and at the same time, he had refined all 20 portions of demonic beast blood essence. Lu Ming's cultivation had improved at lightning speed. He had already reached the peak of the 7th level martial master, and was not far from the 8th level. As the 20 portions of blood essence were divided into a month of devouring and refining, Lu Ming's cultivation was not the slightest bit shaky and was still very stable. Now, I can start cultivating the astral fire spear technique. Lu Ming entered the Temple of Paragon, took out the astral fire spear technique, and began to read it carefully. The astral fire spear technique belonged to the fire attribute and was divided into 6 moves. Astral fire spear technique: fire dance, broken armor, moon seizing, lightning chasing, landslide, explosion. 6 moves. Except for the explosion move, the other 5 moves had no difference in strength. It was just that the usage of the spear was different, and the level of comprehension was different. After reading carefully, Lu Ming began to cultivate. At the end of the stairs, the faintly discernible palace was constantly chanting scriptures, which made Lu Ming's mind extremely clear, and he comprehended martial skills very quickly. Chi chi buzz buzz, the sound of the spear piercing through the air and the vibrating of the spear itself resounded throughout the Temple of Paragon. This cultivation lasted for half a month. In the mountain forest, Lu Ming's figure moved freely, and a fire-patterned spear danced in his hand like a flaming dragon. Chi, Lu Ming suddenly thrust out his spear. Astral Fire Spear Technique. Broken armor, the long spear pierced through the air with unparalleled speed. Like a bolt of lightning, it pierced towards a 2-meter-tall boulder. At the tip of the spear, there was a rotating cutting force. Bang! The boulder was pierced through like tofu by the flame-patterned spear. Astral Fire Spear Art. Landslide. All of a sudden, the fire-patterned spear shook. The body of the spear flicked, and a vibrating force was generated. Boom! The boulder exploded from the middle, sending rubble flying everywhere. I have finally reached the first level of the Astral Fire Spear Technique. Lu Ming's face lit up. As expected of a low-grade profound rank martial skill, it was extremely powerful. Lu Ming had only cultivated it to the first level, but he felt that its power had already surpassed the Flowing Light Sword Art. After all, the Flowing Light Sword Art had been stuck at the 5th level, and it was difficult to break through. The first level of the Flaming Astral Spear Art was equivalent to the 6th level of the Flowing Light Sword Art. Generally speaking, if one was not a martial grandmaster, it would be very difficult to successfully cultivate a profound grade martial technique. For example, the Zhu family's ancestor, Zhu Bing, had cultivated for dozens of years before barely reaching the first level. As for Lu Ming, he had reached the first level in just half a month. This was inseparable from the effect of the chanting sound. Of course, if Lu Ming had not bitterly cultivated the foundation spear technique for a month, he would not have been able to cultivate the flaming astral spear arts so quickly. Then, he continued to cultivate. 7 days later, Lu Ming sat cross-legged on a blue stone, frowning as he pondered. It's still lacking a little. It doesn't feel very smooth. After this period of cultivation, he realized that his cultivation of the flaming astral spear art was still lacking a little. He had not comprehended the essence of the flaming astral spear art. If he were to cultivate like this, even with the help of the chanting sound, his cultivation progress would not reach the level that Lu Ming was satisfied with. Maybe it's because of the environment. The flaming astral spear art belongs to the fire attribute. I should cultivate in a place filled with fire attribute spirit chi. Only then can I be like a fish in water. Only then can I cultivate faster with the chanting sound. Where is the fire attribute spirit chi? That's right, the Lingnan fire region. Suddenly, Lu Ming's eyes lit up as he thought of a place. The Lingnan fire region was southwest of the mystic essence sword sect. It was an area of volcanic eruptions. The volcanoes covered a radius of 1,000 miles and were filled with fire and fire attribute spirit chi. It was perfect to cultivate the flaming astral spear art there. The key was that the area not only had a large number of fire attribute demonic beasts, but also produced a spirit grass called flame crystal grass. The flame crystal grass was one of the precious materials needed to cultivate the 3rd level of the true dragon of battle art. It was more precious than the condensing spirit fruit and the blood smoke stone. If he were to exchange it at the mystic essence sword sect, Lu Ming estimated that it would cost at least 10 to 20,000 contribution points. Going to the Lingnan fire region was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Immediately, Lu Ming returned to the mystic essence sword sect to visit Pang Shi. After such a long time, Pang Shi had already recovered and was cultivating even more diligently. Seeing that Pang Shi was fine, Lu Ming was relieved. He then used his contribution points to exchange for some detoxification pills and true chi recovery pills before heading to the Lingnan fire region. On the way, Lu Ming caught a Class 4 Stage 2 wind lion as a mount. The wind lion was extremely fast, much faster than the green scale horse. 5 days later, Lu Ming arrived at the Lingnan fire region. Before he had even entered the Lingnan fire region, he could already feel a wave of hot air blowing against his face. After releasing the wind lion, Lu Ming walked into the Lingnan fire region on foot. There were no volcanoes in the periphery of the Lingnan fire region. The ground was pitch black, like scorched rocks. There were waves of hot air coming out from the ground. Sizzle. Sometimes, there would be a wave of hot air rushing out from the ground. If an ordinary person touched it, they would be scalded. Not long after Lu Ming entered, he saw some figures occasionally. These people had a name. They were called stone pickers. In the center of the Lingnan fire region, there were many volcanoes. When these volcanoes erupted, they would spit out a type of, or called flame stone. Flame stone could be refined into flame iron, which was an excellent material for forging spirit weapons. However, those who came here to pick up stones were usually rogue cultivators with low cultivation, and even ordinary people. The Lingnan fire region was full of danger. From time to time, the ground would spit out hot air, and sometimes even magma and flames. Even martial Dao experts would be seriously injured, or even killed if they were hit by it. The flame stone was, after all, just an ore, so it was not expensive. Therefore, those with high cultivation rarely came here. Lu Ming did not stay in the periphery for too long. He wanted to go to the central region, where many fire-type beasts lived. The fire-type spirit chi was also stronger there. That was the place for cultivation. Soon, Lu Ming passed through the periphery and arrived at the central region. In the central region, the air was even hotter, as if he was in a big steamer. The stones on the ground were fiery red, and he could even hear a sizzling sound. Lu Ming looked over. Occasionally, he could see a stream of magma gushing out from the ground. This region was even more dangerous, and almost no one came here. Lu Ming circulated his genuine qi throughout his body to resist the heat. At the same time, he was fully focused on observing the situation on the ground. Chapter 87. After walking for about 10 miles, Lu Ming stopped. This was because a ferocious tiger covered in red flames had appeared in front of him. The red flame demonic tiger, a Class 8 LV2 demonic beast, belonged to the fire attribute demonic beast. It usually lived in places with rich fire attribute spiritual qi. Roar. The red flaming fiend tiger suddenly let out a loud roar. It opened its mouth and spat out a column of fire toward Lu Ming. Good timing. Lu Ming's eyes flashed as he struck with the flame-patterned spear. Astral fire spear art. Broken armor. With a thrust of his spear, rotating cutting power burst out, destroying the fire pillar that the crimson flame demonic tiger had spat out. Then, Lu Ming rushed toward the red flame demonic tiger and smashed his spear down. Astral fire spear art. Landslide. The spear pressed down, producing a violent whistling sound. The red flame demonic tiger seemed to have sensed the danger. Its fiery red hair stood up and emitted scorching flames. These flames condensed into a huge fireball in the air and blasted toward the flame-patterned spear, trying to block the attack. But it was all in vain. The flame-patterned spear was unstoppable. With a slight shake, the fireball collapsed and the spear continued to smash down. Bang! The spear shaft smashed on the red flame demonic tiger's head, producing a cracking sound. The red flame demonic tiger's forehead was directly dented. The red flame demonic tiger's huge body rolled back dozens of meters before stopping. There was no trace of life in it. Lu Ming walked over and manipulated his bloodline to suck out the red flame demonic tiger's blood essence. Lu Ming would not miss the blood essence of a Class 8 LV2 demonic beast. It cost 800 contribution points in the Mystic Essence Sword Sect. Circulating the spirit-devouring bloodline, it did not take long for the red flame demonic tiger's blood essence to be refined. Lu Ming's cultivation improved again, but he was still a little short of breaking through to the martial master realm. The flame aura here is rich. Let's practice the astral fire spear art here. Immediately, Lu Ming immersed himself in the astral fire spear art and began to practice. Chi-chi, buzz-buzz. Spear shadows crisscrossed and energy surged. As soon as he started cultivating, Lu Ming felt incomparably smooth. He operated the spear arts without the slightest bit of hindrance, as if he wanted to merge with the surrounding environment. As expected, the environment had a huge impact on the cultivation of martial techniques. Smooth, too smooth. Lu Ming's eyes lit up as he immersed himself in this feeling. After cultivating for 6 hours, Lu Ming finally stopped. Hoo-hoo, Lu Ming panted heavily. When he cultivated here, he had to circulate his true qi to protect his body at all times. He also had to observe the surroundings to see if there was magma or flames gushing out. It consumed a lot of his true qi and mind. However, Lu Ming's eyes were filled with excitement. After only cultivating for 6 hours, Lu Ming felt that his astral flame spear technique had made great progress. Then, Lu Ming retreated to the outer area to recover his true qi. After recovering his true qi, Lu Ming entered the Temple of Paragon again. With the help of the chanting, he continued to comprehend the feeling of cultivating in the central area. Sure enough, with the chanting, the feeling of cultivating became clearer, and his comprehension of the astral flame spear technique improved. A few hours later, Lu Ming entered the central area again to cultivate the astral flame spear technique. Just like this, Lu Ming cultivated in the central area. When his true qi was exhausted, he retreated to the outer area to recover. Then, with the help of the chanting, he started to comprehend the astral flame spear technique. Lu Ming's comprehension of the astral flame spear technique was improving rapidly. In just half a month, Lu Ming's astral flame spear technique had broken through to the second level, which was a small success. In this half a month, Lu Ming had killed no less than 10 fire-based demonic beasts. 5 of them were Class 8 LV2, and 1 was even Class 9 LV2. The rest were all below Class 8 LV2. After devouring and refining the blood essence of these demonic beasts and cultivating for half a month, Lu Ming's cultivation finally broke through to LV8 Martial Master. Such a cultivation was already very high among the bronze disciples of the Mystic Essence Sword sect. Huff. Once again, Lu Ming exhausted his true qi and retreated to the outer area. He sat in a secluded pile of rocks to recover. When Lu Ming's true qi was half recovered, he suddenly heard a commotion not far away. No, why did you catch me? I'm just an ordinary person with no cultivation. I can't help you. I'm only a LV3 martial warrior. I can't help you. Let me go. Voices begging for mercy could be heard. Shut up, what's with the noise? I said you can help, so you can help. It's your fortune to be able to help a disciple of the Shifang Sword sect. A cold voice sounded. It was a young man. Young heroes of the Shifang Sword sect, if I can help you, I'll definitely help you. But you want us to enter the central area, even close to the inner area. It's very dangerous there. With my cultivation, I'll be burned to death if I'm not careful. Please spare me. Someone begged for mercy. Clap. Immediately, there was a slap. The young voice said again, "Cut the crap. What do I want you to do? What are you going to do? If you talk nonsense again, I'll cut you with my sword." The other side calmed down. Suddenly, there was a sound of something breaking through the air. A figure appeared on the pile of rocks. It was a young man of 17 or 18 years old. He saw Lu Ming at a glance. "Haha, senior brother, there's another person here." The young man laughed and then looked at Lu Ming. "You really know how to hide. But do you think it's useful to hide here? Hurry up and come out and help us explore the central area." Lu Ming frowned, interrupted the half-recovered true qi, and stood up. "Kid, hurry up and come out. Don't dawdle. I don't have time to dawdle with you." As the young man spoke, he directly grabbed at Lu Ming's throat with his claw. Obviously, in his mind, he wanted to grab Lu Ming like a chick and throw him out. However, he was obviously disappointed. Not only was he disappointed, but he was also shocked, because Lu Ming also reached out a hand and grabbed at him, and he was faster and more accurate than him. He grabbed the young man's wrist. The strong force penetrated the young man's wrist, and the excruciating pain made the young man cry out. Little bastard. How dare you hurt me? You're courting death." The young man slapped Lu Ming with his other hand. "Get lost." Lu Ming shouted coldly, and his true qi burst out. He grabbed the young man's wrist and swung it. The young man's arm directly made cracking sounds, and the bones in his arm broke into several pieces. He screamed, flew more than 10 meters away, and fell heavily to the ground. Little bastard, you're dead meat. How dare you hit me? Do you know who I am?" The young man struggled to get up, hugged his arms, and screamed at the top of his lungs. "Aren't you just a disciple of the Shifang Sword sect? Is that a big deal?" Chapter 88. Since you know that I'm a disciple of the Shifang Sword sect, kneel down and apologize. The young man shouted. What an idiot! Lu Ming was a little speechless. Are all the disciples of the Shifang Sword sect like this? Since Lu Ming knows that I'm a disciple of the Shifang sword sect and still dares to attack, he's obviously not afraid of the Shifang sword sect. Yet, he still asked Lu Ming to kneel down and apologize. Isn't that an idiot? Lu Ming's body swayed and he got out of the pile of rocks. At this moment, a few figures rushed over. They were all young people. Further away, there were 5 young men who surrounded more than a dozen itinerant cultivators and ordinary people who were picking up blaze stones. Junior brother Zhao, what's going on? One of the people who rushed over asked. Senior brother, this little bastard actually dared to sneak an attack on me. You guys have to cripple him for me. The young man from before shouted. Brat, how dare you injure a disciple of my 10 Directions sword sect? Now, let me cripple your cultivation and then obediently help us explore the way inside. Perhaps you can still save your life. One of the fat disciples of the Shifang sword sect said. He looked at Lu Ming coldly with a condescending expression. Lu Ming touched his nose speechlessly. Are these the disciples of the Shifang sword sect? Why do they all look so condescending? The Shifang sword sect is indeed the largest sect in the Burning Sun Empire, but there's no need for everyone to look so condescending. Kid, I'm talking to you. Are you deaf? The fat young man shouted coldly. You asked me to explore the way inside and captured so many ordinary people. What do you want? Lu Ming did not answer and instead asked curiously. Nonsense, is that something you can ask? Go and explore the way obediently. The fat young man said coldly. Then, he threw a punch at Lu Ming's dantian. The fat young man was a 7th level martial master, and his punch was extremely powerful. If it hit, it would definitely break Lu Ming's cyclone and cripple his cultivation. This was the Shifang sword sect. They were extremely domineering and wanted to cripple someone's cultivation at the slightest disagreement. Shifang sword sect, haha. Since we're going to meet sooner or later, I'll collect some interest first. Lu Ming's eyes turned completely cold. Lu Yuntian was very likely to fall into the Shifang sword sect's hands. Lu Ming did not have a good impression of the Shifang sword sect. But now, boom, the flaming dragon fist was unleashed. Lu Ming's fist force was faster and more ruthless. The punch accurately landed on the fat youth's stomach. The fat youth's eyeballs instantly protruded out. Soon after, he let out a shrill scream. His fat body was like a rubber ball, flying far away. He flew for nearly 20 meters before falling to the ground. Then, he rolled a few times before coming to a stop. The fat youth screamed miserably. Lu Ming said indifferently, Boy, you're courting death. The remaining 2 young men roared and unsheathed their long swords. 2 sharp sword lights shot out toward Lu Ming. Both of them were in the late 7th level martial master realm. Astral fire spear technique. Moon seizing. With a flick of his hand, the fire-patterned spear appeared and swept out. In the air, a fiery red light flashed like a moon. Bang! Bang! The 2 young men of the Shifang sword sect were swept away by the spear without any resistance. They spat out mouthfuls of blood in the air and fell to the ground. They were no longer breathing. Their bones had been broken and their internal organs had been shattered by Lu Ming's spear. The fat young man and the previous young man were stunned. Their faces were pale and their bodies were trembling. Lu Ming looked at the young man with the broken hand. No, don't kill me. The young man with the broken hand screamed in horror. However, Lu Ming was unmoved. He lifted his long spear. Stop! At this time, the 5 disciples of the Shifang sword sect, who were surrounding the dozen stone pickers, rushed toward them. One of them roared and showed his cultivation of the peak 8th level martial master realm. The young man with the broken hand screamed in horror and ran toward the 5 disciples of the Shifang sword sect. But whoosh! Lu Ming swung his spear, and it shot out like lightning. It caught up with the young man with the broken hand in an instant and pierced his chest from the back, nailing him to the ground. Die! Die! Little bastard, not only will you die, but your family and friends will also die. The disciple of the Shifang sword sect, who was at the peak of the 8th level of the martial master realm, roared furiously and rushed toward Lu Ming. Let's see who dies first. Using the dragon snake steps, Lu Ming turned into a gust of wind and rushed toward the 5 disciples of the Shifang sword sect. When he passed by the young man with the broken hand, he pulled out the fire-patterned spear. The two sides were closing in quickly. Wild Wave cut. The disciple of the Shifang sword sect, who was an 8th-level martial master, roared. He held a huge sword that was as wide as a palm with both hands. The sword gleam slashed toward Lu Ming like a storm. Buzz. The fire-patterned spear shook and swept forward. Clang. The spear and the sword collided and sparks flew in all directions, making a huge boom. The disciple of the Shifang sword sect trembled and took a dozen steps back. Lu Ming's body only shook and swayed slightly. Kill. In the next moment, the other 4 disciples of the Shifang sword sect slashed at Lu Ming with their swords. Among the 5 sects of the Blazing Sun Empire, only the Shifang sword sect and the Mystic Essence sword sect were good at sword techniques. The sword techniques that the 2 sects were good at were somewhat different. The sword techniques of the Shifang sword sect leaned toward the hard and fierce side. They were very powerful. The 4 disciples of the Shifang sword sect, 2 8th-level martial masters and 2 7th-level martial masters, joined forces and swept toward Lu Ming like stormy waves. At the same time, they also used bloodline eruption, which was much stronger. However, they were facing Lu Ming, who had cultivated a low-grade profound-level martial skill to the 2nd level of Lu Ming. Moon seizing. Lu Ming's eyes were bright. The genuine qi in his body completely erupted, and he swept out with his spear. Boom, 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 boom. 4 consecutive explosions and 4 consecutive screams were heard. The 2 7th-level martial masters of the Shifang sword sect were directly killed and flew far away. The 2 8th-level martial masters were not much better. They flew more than 10 meters and fell heavily to the ground, coughing up blood. They were also seriously injured. 1 spear strike, 2 dead and 2 injured, which shocked the peak 8th-level martial master of the Shifang sword sect. However, Lu Ming would not give him the slightest chance to breathe. He rushed forward a few steps and then jumped high, smashing down with the fire-patterned spear. Landslide. The long spear smashed down with a shrill whistling sound. The Shifang sword sect disciple's face was pale. He burst out with all the strength in his body and circulated the power of his bloodline to the extreme. He slashed up with his sword. Clang. The long spear smashed on the sword and the force whistled out, forming a gust of wind that swept in all directions. Boom. Chapter 89. He coughed up a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground like a puddle of mud. This spear had directly shattered his arms. The powerful impact had also shattered his internal organs. There was no doubt that he would die. The power of a low-grade black-rank martial skill was finally revealed. Lu Ming had only cultivated to the 2nd level, but its power was twice as strong as the 6th level of a high-grade yellow-rank martial skill. How can you be so strong? Who are you? The disciple of the Shifang sword sect kept coughing up blood and asked unwillingly. His eyes were filled with disbelief. He had been defeated in 1 move with his cultivation at the peak of LV8 martial master. The cultivation that Lu Ming displayed was clearly only at the 8th level of the martial master realm. Mystic Essence Sword Sect. Lu Ming said indifferently. Mystic Essence Sword Sect? The young man muttered. Then, his eyes became unfocused and lifeless. At the same time, the other 2 LV8 martial master experts were also dead. Their internal organs were also shattered by Lu Ming. Although spear techniques were not as varied as sword techniques, they were more violent, direct, and domineering. Only the fat young man was left. At the moment, the fat young man's face was pale without a trace of blood. His body kept trembling and cold sweat poured down his face. Lu Ming walked toward the fat young man step by step. No, don't kill me. The fat young man screamed in horror. Tell me, why did the Shifang sword sect capture so many ordinary stone pickers? Lu Ming asked coldly. I can tell you, but you have to promise not to kill me. The fat young man rolled his eyes and shouted. Oh, you don't want to talk? Then you can go to hell. Lu Ming's eyes turned cold as he raised the spear in his hand. The fat young man was scared out of his wits. He shouted, I'll talk, I'll talk, I'll talk. Lu Ming looked at him coldly, waiting for him to continue. We came with senior brother Zhang. He said he would bring us to find treasures, so we came. Senior martial brother Zhang said that according to his ancestors' ancient records, there is an extinct volcano in the inner region of the South Ridge Flame Domain, and that there are treasures inside. The plump young man hurriedly explained. Then why did you capture so many normal stone pickers? Lu Ming asked. That's because the surroundings of the extinct volcano are very unstable. From time to time, magma and flames would rush out, and even the ground would sink. We need someone to scout the way to find a safe path, and only then can we enter the extinct volcano. The fat young man was scared to death as he explained everything in detail. Lu Ming frowned. It was obvious that they wanted to use the lives of the stone pickers to pave the way for them. This was a martial arts expert. The lives of ordinary people were like ants in their eyes. Lu Ming had never been lenient towards his enemies, but he could not disregard the lives of others for his own selfish reasons. Lu Ming thought for a moment and asked, "What kind of treasure is inside that extinct volcano?" "I don't know. Senior martial brother Zhang didn't tell us. I've told you everything I know. Can you let me go now?" The fat young man begged. He was thinking about how to ask senior martial brother Zhang to kill Lu Ming after he escaped. "Wait, I have another question. What's the cultivation of your senior martial brother Zhang? Is there anyone stronger than him?" Lu Ming asked again. The fat young man answered honestly, "Senior martial brother Zhang is a famous genius of the Shifang sword sect. He has already won 8 consecutive matches on the bronze platform. He is not much weaker than the geniuses on the bronze ranking. Among the disciples here, senior martial brother Zhang is the strongest." 8 consecutive matches on the bronze ranking? Lu Ming muttered. The 5 major sects of the Burning Sun Empire divided their disciples into bronze, silver, and gold ranks. Similarly, every sect had a bronze ranking and a silver ranking. The rules were exactly the same. "All right, I've told you everything you wanted me to say. Can you let me go now?" The fat young man said. "Let you go? When did I say I'd let you go?" Lu Ming said coldly. Then, he thrust his spear and pierced the fat young man's heart. 8 consecutive matches on the bronze platform? I wonder how powerful the Shifang sword sect's 8 consecutive matches are? Lu Ming's eyes flashed with a strong desire to fight. Back then, he vomited blood after being punched by He Tai. He Tai was the Mystic Essence sword sect's 8 consecutive matches on the bronze platform. They both had 8 consecutive matches on the bronze platform, but they belonged to 2 different sections. Their strength was not the same, but the difference was not too big either. Lu Ming's strength had improved greatly during this period, and it was a good time to test the results. Then, Lu Ming devoured all the essence blood of the Shifang sword sect disciples and found a place to refine it. As for the stone pickers, they had already fled like a swarm of bees when the Decimo sword sect disciples had been killed. 2 hours later, Lu Ming's true qi had fully recovered and reached its peak. Then, Lu Ming ran in the direction of the extinct volcano that the fat young man mentioned. In the depths of the central region of the Lingnan fire domain, near the inner region, there was a tall extinct volcano. It was unknown when this volcano had stopped erupting, but the temperature around the extinct volcano was still shockingly high. The ground was crimson red. A few thousand meters away from the extinct volcano, there were more than 20 young men. Needless to say, they were all disciples of the Shifang sword sect. More than 30 stone pickers were surrounded by the disciples of the Shifang sword sect. More than 30 stone pickers were huddled together, their faces filled with fear as they trembled. "Young heroes of Shifang sword sect, I beg of you. It's really dangerous there. You want us to explore the way, that's just sending us to our deaths. I have parents and children to take care of. I beg of you to let me go back." A burly man in his 50s kept bowing and begging. Whoosh! With a flash of a sword, the burly man's head flew up high. "So noisy. You want to leave? I'll send you on your way now." A disciple of the Shifang sword sect said coldly as he sheathed his sword. The other stone pickers kept quiet out of fear, not daring to speak anymore. However, the look of despair on their faces was even more intense. "You, hurry up and scout. If you're lucky enough to make it, you can still keep your life. A disciple of the Shifang sword sect pointed at a dark-skinned burly man. The burly man's eyes were filled with despair as his body trembled non-stop. If you don't want to go, then die now. The disciple of the Shifang sword sect said coldly. I'll go. The burly man said in a trembling voice. Then, he walked out while trembling all over. If he went out to scout, there might be a way out. If he didn't go, he would die. The burly man should have cultivated martial arts, but he had not awakened his bloodline. He was only a first-grade martial warrior. He walked forward carefully, and soon, he had walked more than 200 meters. Whoosh! Suddenly, a stream of lava rushed out from the ground and drowned the burly man. The burly man screamed and turned into a ball of fire. In a few breaths, he was turned into a pile of charcoal. Chapter 90. A living person turned into charcoal in an instant. It was a horrifying scene. When the other stone pickers saw it, they trembled in fear. However, the disciples of Shifang sword sect were calm and even cold. Mark the place where you just walked. Among the disciples of Shifang sword sect, a young man with dark skin and a cold face ordered. This cold young man was the senior brother Zheng that the Shifang sword sect disciple had mentioned earlier, Zhang Qian. He didn't even look at the stone pickers. In his eyes, these stone pickers were just ants, tools to be used. His gaze was fixated on the extinct volcano in front of him. His eyes were blazing. According to the records left by my ancestors, this is the place. I must get the spiritual fire elixir. As long as I can get it, my physical body will be able to reach grade 2. Then, my strength will increase greatly. I will be able to win 10 consecutive victories on the bronze platform and get on the bronze list. Not only will my physical body reach grade 2, but it will also reach a higher level. 300 years ago, my ancestors got the spiritual fire elixir here. Now that 300 years have passed, there must be a lot of spiritual fire elixir here. If I have enough, it's not impossible to reach grade 3 physical body. Haha, then how much will my combat strength increase? Zhang Qian thought fervently. Yes, senior brother Zhang. The disciples of Shifang sword sect responded. Then, they threw out balls of white powder and sprinkled it on the place where the burly man walked, forming a safe route. Now, you, go and find the way. The disciples of Shifang sword sect pointed at a young man in his 20s. The young man's face turned pale. He was in despair and cold sweat dripped down. He shouted, I beg you, let me go. I beg you. Ahai, young heroes, please let Ahai go. Let me take his place. He's still young. A white-haired old man walked out and knelt on the ground. He kept kowtowing. Grandpa, no, you can't go. The young man shouted, let me do it. Let me do it. Please let Ahai go. He's still young. The old man did not seem to hear the young man and kept kowtowing. Oh, what a pair of grandfather and grandson. All right, I'll let you go. Old man, go and find the way. A disciple of Shifang sword sect with a flat nose waved his hand and said, Grandpa, Grandpa, don't go. The young man cried out loudly as tears streamed down his face. Ahai, Grandpa is already so old. It doesn't matter anymore, but you must live on. The old man warned the young man. Then, without turning back, he continued walking forward. The young man watched in despair. 200 meters ahead, the burly man from before had passed through. It was very safe, and the old man passed through smoothly. At this point, the old man carefully avoided the place where the lava was spurted out and continued forward. However, before he could walk 100 meters, the old man stepped on the ground. The ground suddenly cracked and the old man fell down. Immediately after, there was a burst of miserable shrieks. After a few breaths, there was no more sound. Grandfather, the young man roared in despair. The other stone pickers were even more flustered, their faces pale. Make a mark. Zhang Qian continued to instruct. Whoosh, whoosh. Balls of white powder were tossed out, marking out the safe routes and the dangerous areas. You, it's your turn. Go up. The Decimo sword faction disciple pointed at the young man from before. The young man's expression changed drastically. He shouted. Just now, just now. My grandfather had already replaced me. Why are you still asking me to go? Replace you? I never said that he would replace you. He asked to go first. Of course, I have to satisfy him. Now, it's your turn. The Decimo sword faction disciple said coldly with a playful look on his face. The other disciples of the 10 Directions sword sect looked on indifferently. No, no, you can't do this. You can't do this. I'm not going. I'm not going. The young man kept shaking his head as he screamed. The other stone pickers kept quiet out of fear. They did not dare to say a word, fearing that they would be noticed by the Decimo sword faction disciples. You're not going? The Decimo sword faction disciple's face turned cold. He sneered and said, You're not going, right? If you're not going, I'll send you on your way to accompany your dead grandfather. He waved his battle sword, and a cold, murderous intent shrouded the young man. The young man's eyes were filled with fear. In the end, he still moved forward while trembling. When the young man walked forward for dozens of meters, he suddenly ran to the side crazily. Trying to escape? You're courting death. The Decimo sword faction disciple shouted. He held his sword with both hands and slashed at the young man who was running away. Whoosh! A sword aura burst out and crossed dozens of meters in an instant, cutting the young man in half. I've said it before. If you go forward obediently, you might have a chance to live. If you want to escape, only death awaits. The Decimo sword faction disciple sneered. He then pointed again and said, You, go and scout. The people who were pointed at walked out in despair. They trembled as they moved forward, hoping that they would be lucky enough to reach the end. But the result was still death. Just like that, the stone pickers who went forward to scout died one by one in the lava. But the safe route was slowly being explored. The closer it was to the extinct volcano, the more dangerous it was. The ground was unstable. More than a dozen stone pickers died in the blink of an eye. At this moment, they were about 100 meters away from the extinct volcano. He called a few more people to investigate. Finally, a complete and safe path appeared. Young heroes, can we leave now? One of the remaining 10 or so stone pickers asked softly. Leave? Leave where? The news here can't be leaked. Zhang Qian, who had been silent, said, What? What do you mean? The stone pickers' expressions changed drastically. What do we mean? All of you have to die. The Decimo sword faction disciple sneered. No, no, you said that you would let us go as long as you found a safe route. You can't do this. You're disciples of the Decimo sword faction. You can't go back on your words. I beg you. No, I don't want to die. I curse you to die a horrible death. The 10 or so stone pickers who had a glimmer of hope were now in despair. They screamed crazily. Curse us? You know that we're disciples of the Decimo sword faction. Who dares to kill us? The Decimo sword faction disciple sneered. There's someone over there. He's walking over here. Suddenly, a disciple of the Decimo sword faction shouted. The others could not help but look in that direction. At the rear right, a young figure was walking over step by step. That figure was about 15 or 16 years old. He had a slender figure and a delicate face. However, his eyes were extremely cold, so cold that it was terrifying. Chapter 91. Lu Ming swept his gaze across the entire place. When he saw the charred bodies, he could roughly guess what had happened. A cold and sharp killing intent burst out of his heart. Although martial artists had great power, they had their own rules and pride. Generally, martial artists disdained to kill ordinary people. But these disciples of Shifang's sword sect had lost their bottom line. In order to achieve their goal, they would do anything. Lu Ming's killing intent had never been so strong. Feeling Lu Ming's killing intent, the disciples of Shifang's sword sect narrowed their eyes. Zhang Qian frowned slightly. He remembered that he had sent 9 people in that direction, but until now, not only did no one come, but a strange young man also came. Something was wrong. Zhang Qian's expression changed. Lu Ming walked step by step. It seemed very slow, but in fact it was very fast. In a few breaths, he came to the front of the disciples of Shifang's sword sect. Boy, how did you come here? And where are the disciples of Shifang's sword sect over there? Did you see them? A disciple of Shifang's sword sect shouted. I saw them, but they're all dead. Lu Ming responded indifferently. More than 20 disciples of Shifang's sword sect changed their faces. Someone shouted, say, how did they die? Lu Ming smiled coldly. With a wave of his hand, the fire-patterned spear appeared. A powerful aura burst out and he said, of course they were killed by me. Now, I'll send you down to accompany them. Killed by you? Brat, you've got guts. Little bastard. How dare you kill the disciples of Shifang's sword sect? You're dead. Not only you, but your family is also dead. Say, what method did you use to sneak attack? You want to kill us? You're overestimating yourself. I'll kill you. Lu Ming's words caused an uproar. A burly young man strode out, holding a giant sword, and chopped at Lu Ming's head. If this sword hit, it would definitely cut Lu Ming in half. Whoosh! A bolt of lightning flashed, and the burly young man's body suddenly stiffened. With a clang, his sword fell to the ground. Then, he grabbed his throat with both hands. His eyes were wide open like a dead fish, revealing a look of disbelief. There was a bloody hole in his throat, and blood kept flowing out. The chasing thunder of the Fire Astral Spear Art was the fastest move in the Fire Astral Spear Art. The disciples of the 10 Directions sword sect did not even see how Lu Ming made his move. Those who kill will be killed by others. If you want to kill me, then you must be prepared to be killed. Lu Ming's indifferent voice sounded. The burly young man fell to the ground and struggled for a few moments before losing all signs of life. Well done. The dozen or so stone pickers roared in their hearts. Although they didn't dare to say it out loud, they were extremely happy. Zhang Qian's eyes narrowed slightly as he said, what fast speed. Everyone, attack together and kill him together. Kill. Die. All of a sudden, more than a dozen disciples of the Shifang sword sect roared. They leaped high into the air and slashed out streaks of sharp sword auras toward Lu Ming. The weakest among these disciples of the 10 Directions sword sect was a 6th-level martial master, while the strongest was an 8th-level martial master. With more than a dozen people working together, their momentum was extremely terrifying. Even a 9th-level martial master expert would be chopped to death by the chaotic swords. However, Lu Ming did not move at all. He didn't even blink his eyes. Fire Astral Spear Art. Fire Dance. Suddenly, Lu Ming held the end of the spear in his hand and stabbed forward with the long spear. Hoo-hoo, the sound of the long spear vibrating could be heard. Then, fiery red flames appeared in the air. These flames were crimson, poignant, and beautiful. They were like flaming flowers and dancing flames. When the flaming flowers bloomed, screams could be heard from the scene. More than a dozen disciples of the 10 Directions sword sect retreated as their blood drifted in the air. More than a dozen disciples of the 10 Directions sword sect had a bloody hole in their throat or heart. In one move, 13 disciples of the 10 Directions sword sect were dead. However, Lu Ming did not stop at all. He strode forward and swept out his long spear. Moon seizing. Pong pong, a series of bone-breaking sounds could be heard. 8 youths of the 10 Directions sword sect flew far away. They fell to the ground and stopped breathing after a while. Like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, it completely swept through. This was Lu Ming's current combat strength. The Fire Astral Spear Art had been cultivated to the 2nd level. Coupled with the fact that his cultivation had broken through to the early 8th level martial master, his combat strength had increased to a terrifying level. On the field, there were only 3 disciples of the 10 Directions sword sect left. One was Zhang Qian, the other was a 9th level martial master expert. The last one was the young man with a flat nose. He was standing close to the stone pickers, so Lu Ming's attack did not reach him. At this moment, the young man with a flat nose had a miserable expression. His legs were trembling nonstop. As for Zhang Qian, his expression was extremely solemn. Your combat strength is very strong, but you have killed so many disciples of the 10 Directions sword sect. From now on, no one can save you. Zhang Qian said in a cold voice, as long as I kill all of you, who will know that I did it? Lu Ming smiled indifferently. Ha ha ha. You want to kill me? I admit that you are very strong, and I don't have full confidence in killing you. But you want to kill me? I will let you clearly understand how laughable your words are. Zhang Qian pointed his sword at Lu Ming. A powerful red sword Qi was swallowing and spitting out. Junior brother Zhao, let's kill him together. Zhang Qian suddenly shouted. His figure exploded as he slashed at Lu Ming with his sword. The battle sword slashed through the air, producing an ear-piercing sonic boom. At the same time, on the other side, the 9th-level martial master disciple of the 10 Directions sword sect also exploded and attacked Lu Ming with his sword. Swish! Lu Ming struck upwards. Clang! Clang! The long spear and the two battle swords collided, producing a violent vibration. Lu Ming's figure shook slightly as he took 3 steps back. Zhang Qian was also thrown back a few meters and landed on the ground. As for the 9th-level martial master youth, he was thrown back more than 10 meters and spat out a mouthful of blood. This Zhang Qian, what a strong strength. Lu Ming's gaze moved. Although it was only a single move, Lu Ming could feel that the power of Zhang Qian's battle sword was incomparably powerful, like a stormy sea. Compared to him, the other 9th-level martial master youth was trash. He was definitely not weaker than He Tai. The reason why Lu Ming retreated was basically because of Zhang Qian. At this moment, Zhang Qian's heart was also incomparably shocked. Lu Ming's strength was also beyond his expectations. He was not weaker than him in the slightest and was even stronger. Kill. There was nothing to say. The two sides were already mortal enemies. Only when one side fell would it end. The two sides fought again. Zhang Qian and Lu Ming both unleashed their bloodline. This time, Zhang Qian was the main attacker while the other 9th-level martial master youth attacked from the side. For a moment, Lu Ming was somewhat passive. Chapter 92. Cross-Slaying Sword. Zhang Qian held a huge sword that was wider than his palm. His attack was extremely overbearing. With a slash, the sword light formed a cross and slashed down at Lu Ming. Its power was extremely great. Broken armor. Lu Ming's long spear shook and the tip of the spear formed a rotating cutting force that collided with Zhang Qian's sword light. Clang! With a loud explosion, Lu Ming retreated 2 steps while Zhang Qian retreated 3 steps. In a head-on confrontation, Lu Ming had a slight upper hand. How can this Zhang Qian's attack power be so strong? The martial skill he used was clearly not a profound-level martial skill, but a superior yellow-level martial skill. Although it has been cultivated to an extremely high level, its attack power can't be so strong. A trace of suspicion flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. Although Zhang Qian's cultivation had reached the peak of the 9th-level martial master, and he had unleashed his 5th-level bloodline, it was impossible for his attack power to be so strong without a profound-level martial skill. He was only slightly at a disadvantage when facing Lu Ming head-on. Lu Ming's true qi was 3 times stronger and more condensed than ordinary true qi. In addition, he had already cultivated the astral fire spear technique to the 2nd level. Lu Ming could defeat an ordinary martial artist at the peak of the 9th level of the martial master realm in one move. Right, it's his physical body. This Zhang Qian's physical body is extremely strong. He should have cultivated the Tao of body refining. Lu Ming's eyes suddenly lit up. He found that Zhang Qian's muscles were bulging and his skin was covered with a layer of faint red light. It must be his physical body. Zhang Qian cultivated the body refining technique. His physical body combined with his true qi could erupt with amazing combat power. That was why he could compete with Lu Ming. Qi. At this moment, a sword light stabbed towards Lu Ming. How troublesome. Lu Ming frowned and swung his spear. It collided with a thin sword and a figure retreated far away. It was the disciple of the 10 Directions sword sect who was in the 9th level martial master realm. Although this 10 Directions sword sect disciple's attack power was not strong, his movement technique was not weak. He took advantage of the moment when Lu Ming revealed a flaw to launch a sneak attack. If I activate my bloodline, defeating them will be a piece of cake. However, I can't always rely on bloodline eruption. The duration of my bloodline eruption is too short, so it can only be used as a trump card. I can't use it in a regular battle. It's better to use my current state to deal with them. Bang! Lu Ming took a step forward and charged toward Zheng Qian. Landslide. The long spear smashed down heavily from above. Zheng Qian's eyes narrowed as he blocked with his sword. Boom. The rocks under Zheng Qian's feet shattered as he retreated. He's only at the early stage of the 8th level martial master. Although he cultivated a profound level martial skill, how could he be so powerful? My physical body has already been cultivated to grade 1 great perfection, but I still can't beat him. The shock in Zheng Qian's heart was extreme. It would be normal for someone of the same level to suppress him. However, Lu Ming's cultivation was only at the early stage of martial master realm. How did he do it? Kill. Lu Ming's fighting spirit was like a rainbow as he constantly attacked Zheng Qian. It was a good opportunity to use Zheng Qian to hone his spear skills. The rolling dragon-shaped true qi was constantly injected into the long spear. One spear after another, Lu Ming was like an invincible general galloping on the battlefield. Zheng Qian was completely suppressed. Whoosh! At this moment, a sword light suddenly stabbed toward Lu Ming's back. I'm waiting for you to make a move. A cold light flashed in Lu Ming's eyes as he swept out his long spear without looking back. Moon seizing. A red moonlight flashed. The 10 Direction Sword Sect's 9th level martial master disciple was shocked. He used his movement technique and wanted to retreat. However, it was too late. The long spear was 8 feet long. Coupled with the length of his arm, it completely covered a distance of more than 3 meters. Block it. The 10 Direction Sword Sect's disciple was shocked and used his long sword to block in front of him. However, his long sword was a thin sword and the root could not block it. Clang! Lu Ming's long spear struck his long sword. A violent force erupted and the long sword bent over. The body of the sword and the body of the spear struck his chest heavily. Bang! The 10 Direction Sword Sect's disciple's body was sent flying like a sandbag. His body was close to the ground as he slid dozens of meters away, creating a gully on the hard ground. When he stopped, there was no longer the slightest bit of aura. A 9th level martial master expert was directly killed by Lu Ming's spear. After sending the 9th level martial master disciple flying, Lu Ming's long spear did not stop at all. He continued to move forward and collided with Zheng Qian, who was attacking. Now, no one will disturb me. I can deal with you. Lu Ming's calm voice sounded. He took a step forward and his long spear pierced out like lightning. Zheng Qian tried his best to resist. In the blink of an eye, the two exchanged more than 10 moves. The more Lu Ming fought, the braver he became. His understanding of the astral fire spear technique became deeper and deeper. Zheng Qian was completely defeated and retreated. Not far away, the young man with a flat nose looked pale. At this time, he suddenly shouted, "Senior brother Zheng, you hold on. I will return to the sect first. I will definitely report to the elders and avenge you." After saying that, he ran away. Damn it! Zheng Qian roared. He does deserve to die. Don't worry, after I deal with you, I will kill him for you. Lu Ming said lightly. Boom! The spear struck Zheng Qian's sword. Zheng Qian retreated and spat out a mouthful of blood. After a series of battles, his muscles were trembling non-stop. The web between his thumb and index finger was cracked and blood oozed out. If not for his strong physical body and the fact that he could unleash his true qi without caring about the consequences, he would have been killed by Lu Ming. Even so, he was seriously injured. True qi. His true qi is too strong. It's unstoppable. Zheng Qian's eyes revealed a look of horror. Wait a minute. As long as you let me go, I will forget about the matter of you killing so many disciples of my Shifang sword sect this time. How about it? Otherwise, you will definitely not be able to bear the anger of my Shifang sword sect. Zheng Qian showed a look of fear and shouted, "You are still threatening me at this time. What an idiot." Lu Ming said indifferently. The long spear did not stop and smashed at Zheng Qian. Boom, boom, boom. Zheng Qian retreated 7 or 8 steps and coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. His injuries were even more serious. Stop, stop, the treasure. There are treasures in that extinct volcano. As long as you let me go, I can give you half of it. Yes, half of it. Zheng Qian shouted. No need. As long as I kill you, everything will be mine. I don't want to play with you anymore. Your junior brother has already run far away. If we continue playing, he might really escape. Lu Ming curled the corner of his mouth and his body suddenly flashed with a red light. Bloodline eruption. He had tested enough, and there was no need to hold back. Whoosh! The long spear turned into a bolt of lightning and was much faster than before. Zhang Qian could not block it at all. No! Zhang Qian roared. Poof! The long spear directly pierced through his heart. Zhang Qian grabbed the long spear tightly with both hands. His eyes were full of indignation and blood kept coming out of his mouth. He shouted hoarsely, Who are you? Poof! Lu Ming pulled out the long spear, stomped his feet, and chased after the young man with the flat nose at lightning speed. Then, his voice came from afar. Mystic Essence Sword Sect, Lu Ming. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Ming's figure disappeared. Mystic Essence Sword Sect? Chapter 93. Lu Ming's figure was like the wind, extremely fast. He had unleashed the dragon snake steps to the extreme. Although it was only a low-grade yellow-level footwork, with the eruption of Lu Ming's powerful vital energy, his speed was still extremely fast. In just a few minutes, he saw the flat-nosed young man. Hearing the wind, the flat-nosed young man turned around and was almost scared out of his wits. How could he be so fast? Could it be that Zhang Qian was killed? He thought that Zhang Qian could at least withstand 100 moves. Don't come over. The flat-nosed young man ran crazily and shouted randomly. However, the distance between Lu Ming and him continued to close. The flat-nosed young man could not escape. Plop. At this moment, the flat-nosed young man suddenly stopped. He turned around and knelt down with a plop. His movements were smooth. Please don't kill me. As long as you let me go, I won't say a word about what happened today. The flat-nosed young man kept kowtowing and shouting, Why should I believe you? There was a cold smile at the corners of Lu Ming's lips. I swear, I won't say a word. If I do, I'll die a horrible death. The flat-nosed young man pointed to the sky and swore. All right, I'll give you a chance. Lu Ming suddenly sneered coldly and kicked out his leg. Bam! This kick landed on the flat-nosed young man's dantian and scattered his cyclone. You destroyed my cultivation. Didn't you say you'll give me a chance? The flat-nosed young man let out a heart-wrenching scream. Don't worry, I'll give you a chance. Lu Ming grabbed the flat-nosed young man's neck and walked towards the extinct volcano as if he was carrying a chicken. Soon, they arrived at the place where the battle took place. At this moment, the stone pickers had all fled. What do you want? The flat-nosed young man asked in a trembling voice. It's very simple. Go ahead and scout the path. However, you're not allowed to walk on the path that has already been scouted. Go the other way. Lu Ming pointed in the direction of the extinct volcano and said calmly. In an instant, the face of the young man with the flat nose turned pale. His voice trembled as he said, Hasn't the path to the extinct volcano been explored? Why do you want me to scout the way? No, I'm not going. Don't you like to ask others to scout for you? Now, I want you to try it yourself. It's fine if you don't want to go, but I'll send you to reunite with your fellow apprentices. Lu Ming brandished his long spear. Spear light burst forth, and a cold, killing intent enveloped the youth. No, you can't do this to me. That place is full of danger. I'll die if I go there. I'm begging you, let me go. The young man with the flat nose was drenched in cold sweat, and his body was trembling. Especially when he recalled how the stone pickers had been burned to death, he shuddered. Earlier, when he watched others explore the path, he took pleasure in their misfortune and was high and mighty. It was as if he was watching ants struggling on their deathbed, and he didn't have the slightest bit of pity. Now that it was his turn, he was more afraid than anyone else. This is your only chance. My patience is limited. I'll count to 3. After 3 counts, if you don't go, then you don't have to go. Lu Ming's voice was extremely cold. To deal with such a person, what could be more satisfying than giving him a taste of his own medicine? 1, 2, I'll go, I'll go. When Lu Ming was about to count to 3, the young man with the flat nose finally couldn't take the pressure and shouted. Then, his body trembled as he walked forward step by step. The more he walked forward, the more his body trembled. When he walked for more than 100 meters, a foul stench came out. He was so scared that he wet himself. Whoosh! Suddenly, a stream of gas rushed out from under his feet. The young man with the flat nose was scared out of his wits. He screamed and fell straight to the ground. Lu Ming frowned. When he walked up to take a look, he was instantly speechless. The young man with the flat nose's face was ashen. He didn't have the slightest breath. He was scared to death by a stream of hot gas. Lu Ming shook his head and walked back to collect the spoils of war. These were the disciples of the Shifang sword sect. There must be a lot of valuable things on them. Lu Ming wouldn't miss it. While searching for the spoils of war, he devoured their essence blood one by one. After searching, Lu Ming left and returned to the outer area. Then, he entered the Temple of Paragon and began refining the essence blood. Lu Ming's cultivation had reached the Martial Master Realm 8, so the essence blood of martial artists below the Martial Master Realm was of little use to him. Only those above the Martial Master Realm would be of some help. After refining all the essence blood of the disciples of the Shifang sword sect, Lu Ming's cultivation improved, but it wasn't by much. He was still a distance away from the mid-stage Martial Master Realm 8. After refining the essence blood, Lu Ming began to count the spoils of war. With a wave of his hand, 2 storage rings appeared. Among the disciples of the Shifang sword sect, 2 of them had storage rings. It was a pleasant surprise. One was from Zhang Qian, and the other was from the young man in the Martial Master Realm 9. Then, with a thought, a pile of things appeared in the Temple of Paragon. First, Lu Ming began to count the banknotes. Why is there so little? After counting, Lu Ming frowned slightly. The 20 or so disciples of the Shifang sword sect only had about 4 million taels of silver in total. 4 million taels of silver might seem a lot, but it depended on where they got it from. The disciples of the Shifang sword sect were at least in the Martial Master Realm 6. On average, each of them had less than 200,000 taels of silver. This was considered very little. On second thought, Lu Ming felt relieved. It was normal. Just like him, they exchanged the extra silver for contribution points, and then exchanged it for resources that were useful to them to improve their strength. Most of the disciples of the Shifang sword sect were the same. They kept some silver on them and exchanged the rest. After putting away the banknotes, Lu Ming looked at the other things. Some scattered pills were not worth much. Lu Ming directly piled them to the side. Finally, his eyes fell on a few books. Wild Wave Slash, a low-grade yellow rank sword technique. Cloud Treading Steps, a high-grade yellow rank movement technique. Mixed Yuan Art, a high-grade yellow rank cultivation technique. Lu Ming was overjoyed to learn 3 cultivation techniques and martial techniques in a row. Generally speaking, sect disciples like them would rarely have cultivation methods or martial skill manuals on them. This was because cultivation methods or martial skill manuals were usually rented from the sect's book collection hall for cultivation. There was a certain time limit, and when a certain time limit was reached, they would have to return it. Of course, there were exceptions, because some people had some fortuitous encounters and obtained some cultivation techniques or martial skills. These cultivation techniques or martial skills were their own private property. Just like these few, most of them were private property of the disciples of the Shifang sword sect. Among them, the Cloud Treading Steps was obtained from the young man in the Martial Master Realm 9. If these 3 cultivation techniques or martial skills were sold, they would be worth at least 5 to 6 million taels of silver. What a profit! But when Lu Ming's eyes fell on the 4th book, he was shocked. Chapter 94. This was actually a body tempering technique. Presumably, Zhang Qian was cultivating this raging flame Vajra art. Body tempering techniques were extremely rare in the Divine Wilderness continent. Furthermore, body tempering techniques were known for being difficult to cultivate and slow to cultivate. By cultivating body tempering techniques, one's physical body would constantly become stronger and possess all sorts of incredible abilities. According to the strength of the physical body, it was divided into 9 grades. Grade 1 was the weakest and Grade 9 was the strongest. Each grade was further divided into 3 levels: small success, large success, and perfection. However, the body tempering path was not a single path. It was a type of martial arts that was auxiliary to martial arts. Just like the inscription path, it was auxiliary to martial arts. This was because if the physical body was not combined with martial arts, it would not be able to unleash its full power. Take a Grade 1 physical body, for example. It did not correspond to the martial soldier realm. This was because without true energy and various martial skills, the physical body alone was just strength. A Grade 1 physical body was not a match for a martial soldier realm warrior. Even a Grade 2 physical body was not a match for a martial soldier realm warrior. However, this did not mean that the physical body was weak and cultivation was useless. Body tempering was auxiliary to martial arts. Once a strong physical body combined with true energy and various martial skills, it would erupt with unimaginable power. It was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Instead, it would increase exponentially. For example, the stronger the physical body, the more true energy one could unleash without fear of injuring one's body. Some powerful martial skills and even secret techniques were very harmful to the physical body. Without a strong physical body, one would not be able to withstand it. Furthermore, the stronger the physical body, the more incredible abilities one would have. The stronger the physical body, the stronger one's vitality and recovery ability. Even if one was injured, one could recover quickly. It was said that when the physical body was strong to a certain extent, one could control all the muscles and bones in one's body. Even if one was injured, one could instantly seal the wound. One could also control the muscles and bones, change one's body shape and appearance. It was extremely magical. If one was stronger, they could even regenerate broken limbs, or even regenerate from a drop of blood. Of course, these were all legends. Therefore, the body tempering path was auxiliary to martial arts. When combined with martial arts, one could erupt with great power. Zhang Qian was a good example. He didn't cultivate any profound grade martial skills. It was just that his physical body was much stronger than Lu Ming's. By relying on a yellow grade high-grade martial skill, he was able to erupt with strength that was on par with Lu Ming. This was especially true for some close combat martial artists who cultivated palms, fists, and claws. If they combined these skills with a strong physical body, their strength would increase even more. Lu Ming hurriedly opened the Raging Flame Vajra art and read it. After watching it, Lu Ming fell into deep thought. The Raging Flame Vajra secret art can at most allow a person to cultivate a third-grade physical body. It seems that Zhang Qian has only cultivated to the first-grade great perfection, not the second grade. That's enough. If I can cultivate a Tier 3 fleshly body, my strength will increase by at least several times. Lu Ming's eyes gradually lit up. This was not just a saying. When a martial artist cultivated, as their cultivation increased, their true qi would also slowly temper their physical body, causing their physical body to slowly become stronger. However, that process was too slow. It was said that once one reached the martial arts grandmaster realm, one's physical body would naturally be upgraded to rank 1. However, that simply could not meet the needs of a martial artist. The stronger one's cultivation was, the stronger and more condensed their true qi would be, and the greater the pressure on one's meridians and physical body would be. Therefore, when a martial artist fought, they would subconsciously reserve a portion of their true qi to protect their meridians and physical body. Usually, it was said that one could unleash 100% of one's strength. However, in a real sense, one would not be able to unleash 100% of one's strength. However, only after one's physical body became stronger would one be able to unleash 100% of one's true qi without any worries. This was especially true for Lu Ming. His true qi was too strong and condensed. Therefore, he subconsciously left more true qi to protect his meridians and physical body. Therefore, the Raging Flame Vajra art was more important to Lu Ming than a profound grade martial technique. After carefully studying the cultivation method of the Raging Flame Vajra art, Lu Ming put it down and looked at the 5th and final book. This book was not a cultivation method or a martial technique. It was a notebook. He had found it in Zhang Qian's storage ring. After opening it, Lu Ming skipped over the first few pages that were not important to him. After flipping through a dozen pages, he found a few pages that had been marked. Only then did he see the ones that interested Lu Ming. These were the records of the extinct volcano from before. It turns out that the extinct volcano contains the spiritual fire milk. It is extremely useful for cultivating the raging flame Vajra art. It turns out that the treasure that Zhang Qian was looking for was the spiritual fire milk. After reading it, Lu Ming's eyes lit up. Originally, the progress of body tempering cultivation method was extremely slow. Lu Ming did not want to cultivate the raging flame Vajra art to a high level in a short period of time. However, if he had the spiritual fire milk, it would be different. The raging flame Vajra art might be able to reach a certain level in a short period of time. It did not need much. As long as he could cultivate to a first-grade physical body, it would be of great help to Lu Ming's combat strength. Let's go. Since I know about it, I can't miss it. After tidying up his things, Lu Ming left the Temple of Paragon and headed to the central region. He returned to the extinct volcano. Roar! Roar! The demonic beasts roared. 5 or 6 demonic beasts ran away with the corpses of the 10 Direction Sword Sect disciples in their mouths. The smell of blood must have attracted the demonic beasts over. Lu Ming ignored them and went to the path that the 10 Direction Sword Sect disciples had asked the stone pickers to explore. There were marks made with white powder, and the outline of the path was clearly visible. Lu Ming pondered for a moment before he walked forward. He did not walk very quickly. He circulated his true qi and observed the ground with all his might. The terrain in this area was constantly changing. It was fine before, but it did not mean that it would be fine now. Fortunately, there were no accidents along the way. Lu Ming successfully made it through this section of the road. After walking through this path, he arrived at the foot of the extinct volcano. Here, thick black rocks were piled up. They were very stable, and there was no need to worry about lava spewing out. Lu Ming climbed up. The extinct volcano was not tall, only a few hundred meters. Soon, Lu Ming reached the peak. There was a huge hole in the middle of the peak. It was a few hundred meters deep, and there were pitch-black crystals at the bottom. According to the ancient records of the Zheng family, the fire spirit milk was at the bottom of the volcano. Without the slightest hesitation, Lu Ming slowly climbed down along the surrounding walls. Soon, he reached the bottom of the extinct volcano. The black crystals below were extremely hard, and there was a deep hole in the wall of the extinct volcano. In the hole, Lu Ming immediately saw a stalk of spiritual grass. This stalk of spiritual grass was fiery red and gave off a sparkling glow. Flame crystal grass. Seeing this stalk of spiritual grass, Lu Ming was overjoyed. This was one of the materials needed to cultivate the 3rd level of the true battle dragon art. Lu Ming had come to the Lingnan Fire region to see if he could find the flame crystal grass. Chapter 95. Not only that, Lu Ming walked closer to take a look. There was a pool of liquid at the root of the flame crystal grass. It wasn't much, but it was fiery red. It looked like it was formed by melting fire jade. Fire spirit milk. This is the fire spirit milk. Lu Ming was overjoyed. There was indeed fire spirit milk here. No wonder the flame crystal grass could grow here. Fire spirit milk was a rare treasure of heaven and earth. It could only be formed in places with extremely rich fire attribute spiritual energy. It contained rich fire attribute essence. Lu Ming stepped forward and moved his hand. A jade box and a jade bottle appeared. The jade box was made of ordinary white jade. Lu Ming had prepared it himself to store the spirit grass. The jade bottle was found in Zheng Qian's storage ring. It was made of fire jade and was suitable for storing the fire spirit milk. He took out a sword and carefully dug out the flame crystal grass and put it into the jade box. Then, he circulated his true qi and sucked the fire spirit milk into the jade bottle. It's quite a lot, at least 2 jin. Lu Ming was overjoyed. He thought that 1 jin would be a great opportunity. He didn't expect it to be 2 jin. If I refine all this fire spirit milk, how strong will my physical body be? I can at least cultivate to grade 1 upper realm, right? Lu Ming thought to himself. He kept the things and walked up the stone wall without stopping. Along the way, he didn't encounter any threats. Soon, Lu Ming walked out of the central region and returned to the outer region. After returning to the outer region, Lu Ming went straight into the Temple of Paragon. Sitting cross-legged, Lu Ming took out the Raging Flame Vajra art and read it carefully. Then, he took out the jade bottle containing the fire spirit milk. Now, I'll use the fire spirit milk to cultivate the Raging Flame Vajra art. Lu Ming opened the bottle cap and thought for a moment. Then, he took a small sip. Boom! After swallowing a small mouthful of the fire spirit milk, it was like a volcanic eruption. It emitted a hot aura and violent energy that filled Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming's body was like a fireball. The energy of this fire spirit milk is too terrifying. It's beyond my imagination. It's so hot and painful. The fire spirit elixir's energy was incomparably hot, burning Lu Ming's muscles and bones. This situation was like putting Lu Ming directly into a roasting fire. One could imagine how painful it would be. I must endure it. The reason why it hurts so much is because my body is too weak. I have never cultivated the Tao of body refinement before. I have only used my Jin Qi to slowly refine my body. After the first time, my body will improve, and the next time, it won't hurt so much. Lu Ming's mind raced. He gritted his teeth and activated the Raging Flame Vajra method, starting to absorb and refine the scorching energy. Sizzle! It was as if his fleshly body was a piece of iron that was being burned and forged in a raging flame. Lu Ming could even hear the sizzling sound of his fleshly body being burned. This process lasted for a full 2 hours before the energy of the elixir of fire was completely refined. At this moment, the pain completely disappeared, and an extremely comfortable feeling spread throughout his body. My physical strength has indeed improved a lot. Lu Ming carefully felt the changes in his body. He found that although his body had not become much stronger, his muscles had become much firmer, and his entire body was filled with strength. The qi and blood in his veins were surging, full of vitality, and his body functions were stronger than before. The Raging Flame Vajra method and the Fire Spirit Elixir are a perfect match. I have only refined a small mouthful, and there is such an improvement. Although I have not reached the level of a first-grade body, I believe that I will reach it soon. Now, continue. Then, Lu Ming swallowed a small mouthful of Fire Spirit Elixir and continued to cultivate the Raging Flame Vajra method. Just like before, when the Fire Spirit Elixir entered his body, it erupted with an intense fire attribute essence that was incomparably hot. I wonder if the Devouring Spirit bloodline is useful for the Fire Spirit Elixir? Lu Ming's heart suddenly moved. Before his bloodline was completely reborn, he could quickly refine the power of the pill. Then, could he quickly refine the power of the Fire Spirit Elixir now? He would know after trying. Immediately, Lu Ming controlled his bloodline, and a powerful devouring force was produced from his spine. Suddenly, all the energy of the Fire Spirit Elixir in his body was absorbed by his bloodline. Not long after, a gentle and pure energy flowed into Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming circulated the Raging Flame Vajra method and absorbed all the energy into his body, using it to increase the strength of his body. It was different from devouring blood essence. The bloodline itself would cut off half of the energy to strengthen the bloodline itself, and only half of the essence would enter Lu Ming's body. The Fire Spirit Elixir was different. All the energy would enter Lu Ming's body. Under the circulation of the Raging Flame Vajra method, Lu Ming's body strength was rapidly increasing. In just 10 minutes, the small mouthful of Fire Spirit Elixir had been completely refined, and he felt that his body had become stronger. Moreover, he did not feel the slightest pain. If I had known earlier, I would have controlled my bloodline from the first mouthful. I wouldn't have had to suffer so much. Lu Ming regretted it. After resting for a while, he continued to refine the Fire Spirit Elixir. A day later, the Fire Spirit Elixir had been refined. Lu Ming's body had broken through and reached the first-grade physical body, which was at the small success stage. Boom! Lu Ming circulated the true dragon fighting art. Dragon-shaped genuine qi was like a river, surging unscrupulously in Lu Ming's meridians. Boom! Genuine qi was attached to his fist, and he punched out. His fist passed through the air, forming a sonic boom, and a transparent airwave rushed out far away. Strong. My physical fitness is more than 10 times stronger than before. Whether it is my muscles, bones, tendons, or internal organs, they have all improved by many times. Last time, when he was besieged by Yao Tianyu and his men, he was seriously injured and took 7 to 8 days to recover. But now, Lu Ming believed that he would be fully recovered in 3 days. This was the benefit of a strong physical body. Moreover, the combination of Lu Ming's physical body and cultivation had increased his combat strength. Of course, if Lu Ming did not use his true qi or martial arts techniques, he could easily defeat a martial artist at the 3rd level of martial warrior with his physical body. The Tao of the physical body was not used for fighting, but to support the martial path. I can't just focus on refining the fire spirit elixir to improve my physical body. Otherwise, I won't be able to adapt quickly. I should go out and practice my spear art to improve my physical body and martial path. When my physical body, genuine qi, and martial techniques are perfectly integrated, I will continue to cultivate my physical body. Lu Ming immediately left the Temple of Paragon and returned to the central region to practice the astral flame spear art. Just like that, Lu Ming practiced his spear art for a few days and refined some fire spirit elixir. As time passed, Lu Ming's spear art and physical body improved rapidly. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 days had passed. On the 23rd day, Lu Ming refined the 2 kilograms of fire spirit elixir, and Lu Ming's physical body improved like a rocket. He skipped greater grade 1, greater grade 1, greater grade 1, and reached lesser grade 2. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.